Michael 10 no longer exists.
Wait, don't tell me. Let me guess. From now on, you're known as Swarm.
Not bad.
Not bad at all, Marvel Games, not bad at all. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very exciting Spider-Man PS4 related video. And yes, we are once again here to talk about the very exciting and intriguing comic series relating to Spider-Man PS4 of City at War. So in the last video, we did go over a few early previews of the second issue of City at War, while also diving into what we got of a glimpse of a very much classic Spidey villain that is featured within this comic of Swarm. And besides that, we also got confirmation of fan favorite Marvel characters relating to the Spider-Man universe, such as Genki Lee, that are indeed within the same universe of Spider-Man PS4 in the comic itself. So now that the second issue of City at War is officially released, we are going to take an even deeper dive within the comic book lore itself, as well as go over some very interesting character teases and portrayals in the game's universe. But of course, what comic book is complete without showing off some amazing panels of the artwork that is featured within it? So for those of you who missed out on the first issue of City at War, it pretty much portrayed the beginning of the game's story while also showcasing some very interesting scenes relating to Mary Jane and Otto Octavius. Although this time around within City at War issue 2, it does take time to dive into Miles Morales' story within Spider-Man PS4's narrative, as well as beginning to enter the second act of the game's story. And as you can see on screen right now, those moments mainly include one of the biggest set pieces in the game of the helicopter chase, as well as the huge City Hall bombing involving the Inner Demons. Although, one of the biggest highlights of issue 2 overall is seeing more of an in-depth look at Miles Morales' character within Spider-Man PS4's universe continue to expand, as well as how he handled his father's death of Jefferson Davis. So even though the City at War comic might do a few things differently compared to how they originally occurred within the main game, the biggest highlight of each issue is seeing the characters expand within their own separate storylines in the comic itself. And just like issue number 1, if you do happen to go to the very end of the comic itself, you will find a very awesome passage from the main editor of the comic with Mark Basso. But before we fully dive into Mark's awesome passage, I do want to give a huge highlight to Bill Roseman, who did post this relating to the comic a day before its release. So as we received previously, we did see an awesome look at Swarm's character portrayal within Spider-Man PS4's universe, but Bill Roseman actually doubled down on this and provided his full-on concept art of Swarm's design for the game. So even though we have received some really obscure Spider-Man villains appearance within the comic books of Spider-Geddon and City at War with Tarantula and Swarm, this is essentially how their designs would look if they were to be featured in the game. And as Bill Roseman stated on Twitter, Daily Bugle breaking news: Marvel's Spider-Man City at War number 2 unleashes the hashtag Spider-Man PS4 quote-unquote game version of Swarm with back matter commentary. All new, all creepy design by @Michelle_Bandini. Dedicated to Swarm's #1 fan @Christos Gage, who, if you guys don't know, is one of the game's main co-writers. And as we see from this insanely awesome looking art right here, this is essentially what Swarm would have looked like if he were to be featured in Spider-Man PS4 as an actual villain that we could have faced against. So knowing that we already got an awesome reference to Swarm's existence within Spider-Man PS4 during one of J. Jonah Jameson's podcasts, it's absolutely mind-blowing seeing his full concept art in the City at War comic. Now, if you're someone who is personally aware as to what Swarm looked like in the original comics, you can see a vast change that Marvel made with his costume design while also paying tribute to his original outfit. Now, as we can see here, Swarm's original design from the comics pretty much looked like a fully naked man covered in bees while wearing a purple hoodie and cape and occasionally wearing a pair of white gloves. And I gotta say, after seeing Swarm's design within Spider-Man PS4's universe, it's absolutely stunning in comparison to the original look. Mainly starting off with the title itself, Swarm's villain name has actually now been abbreviated to have a scientific purpose behind the suit that he is wearing. And as you can see here, Swarm actually ends up standing for Symbiotic Warfare Anthophila Restraining Model. And in case you're wondering about the A part of Swarm, Anthophila actually is the official scientific title for a bee. But alongside modernizing Swarm's name to actually have a scientific purpose behind it, the entirety of his outfit is actually a fully plated suit of armor that has a purpose with the bees inside of it. Even though the entirety of this suit is absolutely amazing to look at, that, my favorite part about it has to go to the crazy mask that Swarm is wearing on his face. Just like all the other villain designs within Spider-Man PS4, Marvel and Insomniac managed to find a way to fully innovate the design of a classic villain like Swarm while also trying to modernize it in a way that makes sense and keeping it classic all at the same time. So instead of having his entire body be composed of bees, he does have this suit to contain them and try and use them in different methods all across the outfit. As we see right above his immensely malicious looking mask, we do get a description as to what the mask entails and to what the hand of the suit actually has on it. So as we see described above his immensely malicious looking bee mask, it does turns out that Swarm's entire body is basically one giant beehive with a numerous amount of cells making the entire organism of him operate. And this feature is even further portrayed as we move down the concept art sheet, where we do get a full body look at Swarm's entire armor, primarily given the section located next to his right shoulder, stating that the transparent sections of his armor are indeed sections where we can see the swarm of bees flying around his body. And adding on to these spectacular features, not only can Fritz von Meyer free the bees to leave his body and armor to become an actual swarm of bees through his hands, but he can also do it through his prosthetic arms and legs with the holes on them to actually release the bees and attack Spider-Man with. Now, even though Fritz von Meyer is essentially a skeleton living inside this suit of armor, his main body consists of bees that are essentially parasites that do flow throughout his dead body. So not only do all these bees fully encapsulate what's left of Fritz's body, but he also manages to use them to his advantage and use their humming to simulate a human voice, which does end up sounding a bit robotic and a bit shallow. And given how much detail Marvel gave to Swarm's design in City at War, even though we didn't get to fully see him in the main game, just makes me even more excited to see where the comic series is going to head in the third issue. And speaking of the next issue, not only do we get a great sense as to which character is going to be primarily focused on in it, but we also get a glimpse as to some other characters that are potentially featured within Spider-Man PS4's universe. If you manage to recall the very first post-credit scene within Spider-Man PS4's main ending, you will know that we did get an awesome scene between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And not only does Miles fully showcase to Peter that he does in fact have spider powers, and this is indeed focused on within the very end of Silver Lining, but we do also get this very interesting line from Miles right here.
I'm not an expert or anything, but I think it's in the way that you ask her.
I'm getting too nervous.
Now, if you manage to also read the prequel novel of Spider-Man PS4 with Hostile Takeover and also read a few teasing tweets from Insomniac Games, you will know that they have teased in the past that Gwen Stacy might be alive within Spider-Man PS4's universe. As to whether or not seeing Gwen potentially appear within Spider-Man PS4's inevitable sequel is still something to see be played out, but the one question that does still remain is which iteration of Gwen is it going to be? There is obviously the classic iteration of Gwen Stacy from the 616 universe, who was originally Peter's first love and then died by the hands of Green Goblin. Or, if you're more of a Brian Michael Bendis fan, you will know that there's obviously the Ultimate version of Gwen Stacy, who in that universe died by the hands of Ultimate Carnage. And of course, she did later on come back as a crazy clone of Carnage, who did turn out to be exactly the same as Gwen Stacy's DNA, but we won't get into that in this video. But if you're more of a fan of the much more adventurous Gwen Stacy, we do obviously have her spider counterpart of Spider-Gwen, most recently featured within her own comic series and of course into the Spider-Verse. And the reason why I'm bringing up all these iterations of Gwen is because we may have gotten our first look of her within City at War. Now, as we see here in this panel, Miles did discover the news of Spidey and Jefferson trying to take out the demons through one of his friends at school. And even though this character does go unnamed, the three possibilities as to who I think she could be is obviously Gwen Stacy, or just a random friend at school, or even possibly Kate Bishop. If you have read the Ultimate Comics, you will know that Kate Bishop was Miles Morales' temporary girlfriend until it was revealed that her and her family were secretly Hydra agents. And even though Kate personally wasn't too fond of all the Hydra shenanigans her family was getting into, that didn't really end well with her relationship with Miles in the comics. So even though this could possibly be Kate Bishop within Spider-Man PS4's universe, or just another nameless student, I do think it could possibly be Gwen Stacy. Even though I would much prefer it for Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker to have a relationship in the sequel for Spider-Man PS4, I can see the writers doing a similar thing with Miles and Gwen given their relationship in the comics. So if this does turn out to be the one and only Gwen Stacy, I'm really excited to have her hopefully be implemented more within this comic series and possibly within the potential sequel of Marvel's Spider-Man. But to finally go back to the overall ending passage from Mark Basso relating to this specific issue, we do have a lot of awesome info about what we can expect next and their overall passion for the comic itself. So as this passage states, welcome back gang, a heavy end to this issue, but it's the toughest challenges that forge the greatest heroes. And speaking of forging heroes, we wanted to take this opportunity to share another peek behind the scenes and reveal the creation of a character. When we started development of this series, we knew we wanted to be faithful to the storyline of the Marvel Spider-Man game while also expanding on it in new and meaningful ways that you can only see in this comic. And what's more impactful than redesigning a classic Spider-Man villain for this universe? We put our heads together with the Marvel Games folks and, well, I just happen to have Marvel Games VP and creative director Bill Roseman here to expound upon our undertaking. Take it away, Bill. And with Bill Roseman being the white text on the page, he does state, hello webheads. If you haven't already guessed, everyone at Marvel Games and Insomniac Games are card-carrying, underoos-wearing true believers. How far back does our fandom go? Yours truly just stumbled upon photos of the spectacular Spider-Man cake that my mom made for my 8th birthday. So it's been a special thrill and honor to be given the opportunity to collaborate on Marvel's Spider-Man and pour our love for decades of the Wall Crawlers comic book into the game. And to now see everything come full circle as our game's story leaps to life in comic book form. The issue you hold in your hands also presented an amazing opportunity to add to the game's mythology by adding a supervillain not yet seen on the screen. Given the Webslinger's renowned rogues gallery, we had many infamous faces to choose from, but as a tribute to game co-writer Christos Gage, there was only one choice. In the game's J. Jonah Jameson podcast, Christos wrote a few hilarious mentions of quote-unquote a Nazi made of bees, which, as all astute fans know, was a nod to the sinister Swarm, a former evil scientist whose body is comprised of sentient bees? How could we not try to create the game's never-before-seen version? And, as with all the villains in the game, how could we tackle the challenge of reimagining him so that he felt authentic both to his original design and to our modern aesthetic? And as we now transition back to Mark Basso, he does state that challenge went straight to series artist Michel Bandini. Michel immersed himself in the high-tech takes on Spider-Man's villains in the game, and immediately set to work on a souped-up, scientific-focused interpretation of Swarm to fit this world. Pairing the classic cape and, well, bees of the original look, Michel worked out a more mechanical version of our buzzing baddie, including some unique abilities as detailed in his design sheet below. Hope you all dug the result. Let us know your thoughts on Swarm and the Spider-Man City at War comic by writing to us at Gamerverse@marvel.com and marking your message quote-unquote okay to print. In the meantime, check out our next page for more on Miles Morales and be sure to join us next month as Mary Jane's investigation uncovers a startling discovery. So if you have seen all of the previous behind-the-scenes footage already, the ending of the comic does showcase a behind-the-scenes look at the early models for Miles Morales' character and also tease that we are going to get a lot more about Mary Jane in the upcoming 3rd issue. And even though we don't have an official release date as to when the 3rd issue is coming out, we do know that it will in fact release sometime in May. So while these are some of the covers that are going to be featured for the 3rd issue of City at War, we did also get an awesome showcase of what one of the 5th issue covers looks like from Bill Roseman earlier today on Twitter. So with the 3rd issue releasing sometime in May and the 4th issue releasing sometime in June, we do have what the 5th issue looks like releasing sometime in July with this awesome cover of Otto Octavius as Doc Ock fighting Peter as Spider-Man. So knowing that we're going to be receiving even more awesome stuff in the coming months with more issues of City at War and hopefully some other looks at classic Spidey villains like Swarm, I'm really excited about this comic series and where it's going to take us in the future. And with all that said, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts on City at War so far, and what do you think of Swarm's design within Spider-Man PS4's universe? For me personally, I really hope if we don't get to fight him as DLC in this game, I really hope that Insomniac could potentially add him in the sequel for Spider-Man PS4 as a side mission to take on. And again, with already the previous reveals of classic Spidey villains like Tarantula and Swarm, I'm really curious to see what other villain they could release in the coming months. But until next time, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.
I am the face of the future. I took your childish tech and evolved it. From here, I'll continue to replicate and grow until Swarm is everything!
Oh yeah? Well, if I had $1 for every time I heard that speech, I'd have $1.